listeners, welcome back to Exploring the World with the Job Potato Sisters.
I know we said that our ocean season was over, but right when we were reaching out to people to interview about the savannah, we got an email from Adrian and Noah, two of our listeners who had gotten us in touch with a shark scientist.
From Florida International University.
That's right. His name is Simon Dedman, and one of the things he studies are the ecological roles of sharks.
Which we were very interested in, and so...
we interviewed him!
Yes, about the types of sharks he studies, and a lot more.
So, for our listeners, can you just state what your name is, where you work, how long you've been doing this job, and what got you into it?
Okay, so my name's Dr. Simon Dedman. I work at Florida International University. I work for Florida International University. They're based in just a bit north of Miami. And I've been working there for, I guess, a couple of years, just over a couple of years. I was at Stanford before, and then all kind of places before. It's kind of the nature of marine science is there's only so many universities, right? They have to be on the coast. And so this nature of science in general is if you want to keep moving up, there's only so many jobs around. And so you often have to bounce around the world. But that's a good thing if you like bouncing around the world, which I do. So that's nice. What got me into this? I saw Jaws, the film Jaws, when I was a little boy. And it scared the pants off me. I was I wasn't really scared of anything when I was a kid until I saw Jaws, and it really scared me, terrified me. And I just wanted to know everything about sharks since then, when I was a little boy, and I still kind of do. That never really changed. I was sort of just really fascinated by them, and wanted to know everything there was to know. And then as I got older, I got more into kind of geography and mapping and where things go and why they go where they go. And then, so during my PhD, that's what I got into. I got into like learning how to work out where sharks and skates and rays and stuff, where they move and why they go where they go. And I've kind of carried on doing that. I got into programming and developing, and I've written some software packages that help people to do that mapping stuff. And that's what I've been working on for the last handful of years, mostly. It's kind of the fun thing about science is if you're interested in a lot of things, you tend to be able to kind of work for various bits and pieces. So I do the mapping thing quite a lot, but I've also recently done stuff about ecology. So I've mostly done mapping, and now I'm getting back into ecology. So what do sharks do in ecosystems? Like, we know that they eat things and scare things, but we don't know loads about all the other stuff they do. So that's kind of getting into that as well.
What types of sharks do you study, and what is your favorite shark?
I study quite a lot of sharks of different types. What am I studying at the moment? So we just did a paper with some friends in the Bahamas, where we found out that some great white sharks that were tagged up in Cape Cod, up near Boston, that kind of area, like sort of northeast USA.
Yeah.
Come all the way down the coast and are swimming around in deep water off Andros in the Bahamas, which was really surprising because Andros is really hot at the surface, and so you don't expect to get great whites there because they like it to be quite cool water generally. But they're going really deep around the Bahamas, so that was really interesting. So that's something I'm working on, or just finished working on. And let me think. So lots of different sharks, lots of different stuff. I'm hoping to be able to work on oceanic white-tip sharks. They're really cool, quite dangerous as sharks go. So we'll see. There's a project coming up that I'm hoping will work out with a couple of friends. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll happen. What's my favorite shark? I really like thresher shark. So they've got really long tails, and they whip fish with their tails to stun the fish, and then they eat them.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. They have like a very flexible spine, and so they do it like a scorpion. They flick their tails over their heads, snap fish, which is crazy, right? It's really cool. And so there's a project that I was hoping to work on. It didn't quite work out, so we'll have to see if it can happen in the future. There's deep sea thresher sharks called big-eye thresher sharks. I know you guys like the deep sea. So there's big-eye thresher sharks. They've got these really kind of long eyes. They're like, instead of being round, they're kind of
Wow.
tall eyes. And because they go down deep and spend their time looking up to see if they can see fish above them, where this small amount of light from the surface makes a silhouette of a fish above it, and then they can go up and whip it and catch it. So these guys are around Florida, and they go sort of around the Bahamas and around Florida, and sort of in that area all the way into the Atlantic. But we don't know too much about them. Hardly anyone's caught them. They get caught by accident in fishing out in the deep sea, or sorry, out in the open ocean. They get caught by fishing quite a lot. But we think they're really kind of endangered, but we're not sure where they go. So it's hard to protect them and manage them if we don't know where they go. So we were hoping to do a project tagging them and seeing where they went. That didn't happen yet. We didn't get the grant funding, so we'll keep trying because that'd be cool. I'd love to work with those because just they're so crazy and different, and hardly anyone's seen them. So that'd be fun.
So about your great white shark project where you were seeing
Mm.
why they were going to the Bahamas, can you tell us more about that? Were you thinking it was like a migration thing, or were they just generally just moving that direction?
So we know that they migrate from Cape Cod, New England, even up in Canada,
Mhm.
when the water's warm, which because it takes so long to heat the ocean, when it's summer in sort of middle of the year on land, it's warmest in the ocean a little bit later, a few months later, because it takes a while for the water to heat up. So
Yeah.
sort of by even I think it's as late as November, the water can be quite nice relatively up
Mm.
in Canada, Cape Cod, or whatever. And so they'll be up there around then, and following the bluefin tuna do the same thing. They go all the way up into Canada and around New York and New England, and then they come down around May. This is bluefin tuna as well, and go into the Gulf of Mexico. Bluefin tuna to breed. Great white sharks, I'm not sure. I probably should know more about them. I haven't really worked with great white sharks until now. It's kind of a fluke that these tag sharks hit the receivers in Andros, and so we assume they're coming from feeding up in Canada and New England and stuff, and to breed, or just do more feeding in the Gulf of Mexico, and
Okay.
then coming around Florida, around the Keys, Florida Keys, because the Bahamas is right next to it. It might be that they're just taking a path through there because there's deep water that they can find fish in, but it might be that they hang out there. It might be that they just find this deep water and sit there, and because we haven't had acoustic receivers there until recently,
Hmm.
maybe they've been there all the time, but we didn't notice because they're not at the surface. People don't see them, so everyone just assumes, well, it's too warm because the water's hot at the surface. Maybe they've just been there for ages.
Me and Isha don't really know a ton about sharks, but when we were doing some research, we found out that the shark's most common ancestor were the Ascanthodians.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so which were like a type of bony fish. So we were wondering, since those were bony fish, then how did sharks evolve to not have bones but cartilage?
What a great question. I don't actually know. My assumption would be that because I'm under the impression that
Hmm.
bone is ossified cartilage, I think. Isn't it? I think it sort of starts as cartilage and then you add calcium and it strengthens up. I'm definitely not an expert on this. This could be completely wrong.
Okay.
But I suspect there was an evolutionary advantage to sharks having cartilage instead of bone because it's flexible. I guess it uses less energy to just make cartilage than bone. And I'm under the impression sharks get a lot of their kind of internal body strength and structure by having very thick skin and having their body sort of connected to the skin almost like a shell, if that makes sense. So you don't need as much support in your spine if you've got a strong skin. That
Mm,
would be my guess, but I really don't know.
okay.
Good question.
And another thing we were really curious about was we saw some movies and we were reading about megalodons.
Oh, yes.
Really captured our attention too because they were so big, and also how did like the smaller sharks survive like what the dinosaurs couldn't, but the megalodon also like died out eventually.
As I understand it with the megalodon, the current understanding is that we believe that they died out because there used to be loads more whales. There used to be tons and tons and tons of huge whales all over the place, and lots of these really big, huge bony fish, like the acanthodians, for example. And I'm under the impression that that food source of all those whales and huge fish, a lot of them died out in this one period of evolution of time, one epoch or whatever. And so I think that's the sort of current thinking is their food source kind of went away, and there weren't as many big whales and loads of big bony fish all over the place that megalodon could eat around the coast. Um, that's what I think happened. Whereas for the other smaller sharks, like you say, still potentially big sharks like the great white, there was still enough food for them. You know, they weren't competing with megalodon in terms of they're not trying to get as much of the same food. And great whites will still eat, still go for whales, and they'll eat lots of dead whales. Certainly, big great whites will eat lots of dead whales, and so that's a big food source for them as great whites get really big. But big great whites aren't competing with megalodons for dead whales anymore.
So are you saying like even now great whites are still going after like live whales to eat?
Live whales, I don't know. I don't think so, but certainly dead whales. So in South Africa, great whites mostly go for seals, but well, it depends. Kind of everywhere in the world, I think the sort of stage of feeding that great whites go through is when they're young, they'll eat fish and skates and rays near the coast. And then as they get bigger, they start to transition onto seals and sea lions. So certainly here in San Francisco, they go for the sea lions around here, elephant seals and stuff like that. In South Africa, there's a seal population down there that they go for. And then the current thinking is when they get really big, when they get to be a full big adult, then they start to go offshore, and there's sort of migration paths of the great whales as they move around the coast and go along the coast and stuff. And the great whites know when that migration is going to be, and not all of the whales make it, right? Some of them die, and if a whale dies, that's a huge source of food. You know, they've got so much blubber, so much fat, they've got tons of energy. So if one of these whales dies and the sharks know where it's going to be, this could keep them full for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah. And it's kind of no work, right? You can all just sit around munching your way through a great big dead whale instead of having to go and try and catch something, which is lots of work and more dangerous.
So why do some sharks show so little fear to humans, but others do regardless of what their size is?
Well, I mean, even the sharks that are more brave are still pretty scared, right? I think this is a fun, sort of interesting thing about predators in general, right? I think we as humans have this idea, you know, man-eating sharks, big dangerous bears, whatever. But there aren't too many things on the planet that actively will just go after humans, because big predators, because they've got to catch and hunt and kill their prey, every time they have to try and catch and hunt and kill prey, there's a risk that it goes wrong. You know, for us, if we're hunting, we'll be hunting with guns or bows and arrows or traps or whatever. It's kind of safe for us to do that, right? We're not likely to get hurt too much because of tools. But if you're trying to catch something with just your Tibbet's tigers or whatever with your claws, or just running into something and biting it, there's a chance that that animal you're trying to kill, if it takes your eyes out, then you're done for, right? That's the end of you. You're going to starve to death because you can't catch anything again. So that's why sharks are great whites, for example, are quite careful when they hunt things usually. So in general, sharks are quite careful, and certainly they're not interested in humans for a number of reasons. Like there's the times when they'll attack surfers is because humans on a surfboard kind of look like a seal from underneath, right? About the same shape, and there's a silhouette. If you're not everywhere, but in lots of places where great whites will attack from below, if you look the same as a seal, they might charge into you and try and bite you. And then they realize, well, the seal's bottom's come off, the surfboard's gone away. And now it's this little thing with skinny little arms. And all of a sudden, they're not that interested because it's not what they thought it was, which means they don't know what it is, which means good time to maybe take a step back and like think again, because if I don't know what it is, I probably want to leave it alone. They can kind of see that we're not seals in the water, and seals have got, like whales, lots of blubber, right? They need a lot of fat to stay in cold water, which means they're great food. Whereas we're rubbish food, right? We're all skinny and bony. I mean, yeah, even if you're a big fat guy, you're still not particularly good food in terms of like a seal is, right? So, but there are certain sharks that are more brave. If they're if there's a number of them, certainly Caribbean reef sharks, and especially things like silky sharks, can be quite adventurous and a bit brave and almost like a pack of dogs. A single one will be quite cautious, but if you get a number of them, they'll be more and more interested in you, to the point where you might have to give them a little kick with your fin or something just to encourage them not to get too adventurous. And then you've got things like oceanic white-tip sharks. We talked about them earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the understanding is that because they, unlike lots of sharks that live near the coast where there's fish and there's, mammals like seals or whatever, so there's lots of food around in general, oceanic white-tips cruise through the whole ocean. And in the open ocean, there's not a lot of stuff around, right? There's just, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of miles of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're spending their whole life just cruising and cruising and cruising, not seeing anything for days, anytime they see anything, then they're going to be a bit more brave and a bit more adventurous to see what it is. Because if it's food, they need food right now. They can't really afford to wait around. So when you're scuba diving, for example, oceanic white-tips can be a bit more interested in you than other sharks.
We wanted to ask you on your opinion on the famous movie Jaws. What are your opinions of it, and how do you think the movie still is impacting people's thinking today on sharks?
Good question. I love the movie. Like I say, I saw it when I was a kid. Really, really scary. And if you go back and watch it now, it's lots of movies made about any kind of monster, even if it's real animals, they don't always hold up too well because like special effects were kind of terrible back in the day. But because the shark, the sort of animatronic shark that they made, looked so rubbish out of the water, Steven Spielberg, the director, was like, right, I'm going to try and film the shark as little as possible, because if the audience sees the shark a lot, they're going to get a bit bored of it. They're going to go, well, it looks rubbish. So that's why he deliberately did it like a horror movie. You don't really see much. You just see a little bit of a fin. You see the woman screaming, and then then she's underwater, things like that. So it's still really scary. And then when you do see the shark, okay, doesn't look as great now as it sort of maybe did back in the day, but it's still you're really scared by it. So it's still I still think it's a fantastic film in terms of a brilliantly made film, really interesting. The one thing about it is that Jaws, the book, and especially the film, led to huge amounts of people going out killing sharks. So Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws, he spent the rest of his life trying to undo the effects that he'd had on sharks. So right now, and I don't know if this number is still exactly correct, but a few years ago, my friend Steve and a number of his colleagues published a paper, and they worked out that more or less we kill about 100 million sharks a year. Right? It's incredibly huge number.
Yeah.
So that's really sad. And Jaws definitely didn't help at all, right? Caused a lot of people to go out and start killing sharks because they're a menace. But sharks kill like 5 people a year. Right? They don't hardly kill anyone. And now it occurs to me that the reason that people are so fascinated and scared by them is because they look terrifying, right? I mean, sharks, they really occupy a place in our imagination of just pure fear because they've got this, fascinating, dangerous looking thing, big sharp teeth, big eye, all this stuff. Whereas loads and loads of people get run over by cars every day, but you don't lie awake worrying about being hit by a car.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of an interesting thing about risk, right? Where like you think if people were rational, you would worry about everything in proportion to how risky it is. You'd worry about cancer and being run over by a car, and you wouldn't worry about things like sharks or whatever being stung by a bee or whatever it might be. Someone dropping a frying pan out of a tower block and it lands on you. This stuff happens, but it happens so rarely that there's no point worrying about it. But I can't help thinking it's just because they look so scary.
Yeah.
And because unlike stuff that seems like it's random chance, like a car hitting you or a frying pan falling out of a window, it seems like humans aren't used to the ones being chased or attacked or whatever. Even compared to tigers, I feel like more people seem scared of being attacked by sharks than, let's say, tigers. So tigers kill a lot more people than sharks because tigers are on land. That's a really great way to kill humans is be on land, right? Humans tend to be on land. But humans are more helpless in the water, right? The water's big and dark. The ocean's big and dark. You can't see very far. You're kind of aware that they can hunt you. You've got less ability or less control. So yeah, I kind of feel like that's a big factor.
I thought it was interesting actually, because while I was like doing some research about the movie Jaws, I realized that they based the movie off of attacks of a bull shark, but then they blamed it on a huge like great white in their movie. So I
Yeah, right. Of course, yeah. It was a bull shark it was in New Jersey River, right?
think it was Chicago or New.
No,
I
it
think
was
it was
in
New Jersey.
Florida.
No, it was New Jersey actually.
Miami, I thought.
No, New Jersey. Yeah.
But yeah. So that's an interesting one. I guess bull sharks in rivers are less interesting for a story, right? Whereas if it's on the coast, then you can have all this like great video of people surfing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So me and Isha were also researching about sharks like electromagnetic pulses,
Ooh.
like nose type area. So
Yeah.
could you tell us more about like how that works? What is it?
Sure. So sharks have these things called ampullae of Lorenzini, which is like a gel-filled sac with a little hair in it. So they work almost like ears work, and ears detect sound waves, and ampullae of Lorenzini detect electromagnetic waves. So in the air, because the air is, I think it's 25 times less dense than water, electromagnetic waves don't travel in the same way at the same kind of strength, whereas they travel in a much stronger strength in water, so they're more detectable. So we all generate electricity, and our heartbeat generates electricity, and so you can hear a person's heartbeat in the water.
Yeah.
And the heartbeat of kind of anything, right? Any fish, any shark, whatever. And so sharks have got this great ability they've got like a lateral line that runs all the way down the side of their body, and so they can detect where the electromagnetic signal is coming from. And certain sharks, so that's useful just in general to hear fish thrashing around, if that creates a signal, or to hear heartbeats and things like that. But also things like hammerheads and lots of skates and rays have ampullae of Lorenzini all over their face and their nose and stuff, so they can snuffle around over the sand and listen for the electromagnetic pulse of the heartbeat of small fish and worms and bits and pieces hiding in the sand, sorry, so they can snuffle down and eat them.
Can you tell us more about the shark migrations and why so little is known about them?
Sure. I mean, I guess we're coming to find out more and more. So this is the mapping stuff that I do is a lot of that is trying to see where they go and then seeing where they go at different times to try and work out what the migrations are. So different sharks migrate in different ways, and different sharks and skates and rays migrate different amounts. So lots of smaller sharks will tend to stay in one area. And it depends how big that area is, right? So some of them will stay, like I studied a bunch of skates and rays in the Irish Sea, which is near England and Ireland. And the skates and rays there, they go offshore and back inshore, and they don't go too far, 100 miles, maybe tops, not very far. Over in San Diego, my friend Andy studies leopard sharks there. They're quite small, and he found that the females and the males migrate in different ways, and they go to different places. And then I think it's every 2 years, they all come back to the same place to mate, and then they migrate away again. So that's quite cool, quite different. Bigger sharks tend to migrate larger distances. So there was a great study done that showed that sharks from South Africa migrate all the way to Western Australia, thousands of miles. And it's so cool. They use this thing called spy hopping, where once they're in the open ocean, you know what this is, right?
They like pop their heads
Yeah.
out of the water to look around and go back down.
Yeah, and our thinking is that they are navigating by the stars, because once you're in the open ocean, yeah, it's cool, right? Once you're in the open ocean, there's what's it called, magnetic fields that they can use. But if you're in the complete open ocean at the surface, there's only so much
Yeah.
information you can get from magnetic fields. And the fact that they're surfacing at night and sort of staying at the surface, there doesn't seem to be a lot of reason for them to do that other than potentially using the stars to navigate. So we don't know if this is 100% true, but they're traveling a huge distance with not really much else information. So that could be how they're getting there, which is fantastic if it's true.
If they actually use the stars for navigating, what if it's like a cloudy day and there aren't really stars in the sky? How will they navigate if they're in the open ocean?
Yeah, good question. I guess, I mean, presumably, if the magnetic field is still like the Earth's magnetic field has got a weak signal all the time, and it's stronger in the rocks, right? So if you're near the coast and stuff, you can go to the bottom and get a stronger signal. If you're in the open ocean, it's really deep and you're at the surface, you can't get much of a signal. But it might be that they can get enough to know the vague direction, and then next night, tomorrow night or the night after, if it's a cloudless night, then they'll get enough to see, okay, I've gone off course a bit, but I can get back on. So maybe. So we'll see. So that's cool. And then in terms of migrations, we know that lots of sharks will migrate sort of north and south, generally following food patterns, right? So as the year progresses, and it becomes, let's say, the northern hemisphere, it becomes summer in the northern hemisphere, all of a sudden, all of this excess or extra light causes big plankton blooms that can support big fish blooms, and so you get all of this food being generated, and therefore sharks and other fish, like I say, like tuna's the same thing, will travel north and exploit all this extra food resources. And then as that's starting to die out, starting to calm down, it's starting to get colder, they'll come back south again where it's warmer, and then they can breed and stuff like that. So there's sort of quite typical north-south migration. And we're seeing, as the world is heating up, as climate change is happening, and it's getting hotter and hotter around the equator and sort of in the mid bands, the migration pathways and the home ranges of a lot of these species, a lot of the sharks, are moving further towards the poles, so further north in the northern hemisphere.
So I'm curious, do all sharks migrate?
No, not as far as I'm aware. Lots of them will move certain distances, but there seems to be a mixture, even within any one species, there seems to be a mixture of Some sharks will migrate, especially as they get older. Like when they're young, lots of sharks will just stay in one place, and then as they get older and bigger, and they're more able to travel long distances, kind of efficiently, right? It costs a lot of energy to travel a long way when you're small, like same as us, right? If you've got little legs, you get hungry all the time, you don't want to be doing a long, long, long walk. But if you're older, taller, you can walk faster, you can hold more food in your belly, you can travel a long way. And it's the same thing for sharks. But it seems like some individuals are braver, more adventurous, and they'll go a long way. And others will just stay in one place. And that's probably because a certain area, let's say an island. So I've worked in the Bahamas. It might be that Andros Island in the Bahamas can support 20 great hammerhead sharks, right? They need to eat a certain amount of fish. And it might be that the island can support about 20 of them just living around the island all the time. And any more have to migrate away. They can come in occasionally, but they sort of have to come and go. If they want to come in and like feed here and breed here, they can do that for a while, but there's just not enough food for them to stay around all the time. So some will stay around and there's enough food for a few, and others will be more transient and migrate around.
Yes, and another thing I was wondering, so now we're having all these studies about, animals dreaming, right? So I was wondering, do sharks dream? Do they have?
What a cool question. I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, we know that sharks are quite primitive, right? You said earlier about dinosaurs. So they've been around, great white's been around 65 million years. And I presume that many other species have been around more or less long. Some of them older, things like 6 gill and 7 gill sharks have been around for ages. Sleeper sharks and Greenland sharks have been around for ages. Some of them are newer. But they've got quite primitive brains compared to us, right? So an ability to dream, I'd be surprised, but who knows? I mean, do we know which other animals dream?
Like octopuses,
Oh
dogs.
yeah. I mean,
That's
octopuses are crazy smart, right? Dogs are smart, pigs are smart, so that would make sense. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so, but I
okay.
don't know. How do we know that octopuses dream?
Because of so they studied like the pulses in the brain, and
Okay,
based on the pattern of the pulses, they found it like very similar to like us or like
right.
our dogs. And then they were also looking at the movements during the night, the patterns or
Okay.
so there was like a whole study. Actually, we watched a show called Secrets of the Octopus. They go kind of in depth about it. So that's why I was
Cool.
really curious about it. So do sharks process like neural information at all, or does it just
Yeah, absolutely. But sharks and other fish, as far as I'm aware, they're just less developed mentally than something like an octopus, certainly something like a human. We've got a lot more processing power and a lot more mental complexity. Um, I'll have to ask my friend Kara about this. So my friend Kara Yopak, she is a shark scientist and she studies sharks' brains. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, super cool. You get sharks' brains, and they do what's it called? CAT scans. Basically, they'll do the slicing thing where they do like a million little slices, and then you can take a full image of the brain and look at it in 3D, and then work out what each bit is doing. Her stuff is so cool. I'll ask Kara if she knows if sharks dream.
We've actually heard about this process
Oh yeah,
before,
they
like
make
brain soup
yeah, they make like brain soup.
to study. But
Brain soup.
yeah, it was like a process to study animal brains.
Yeah.
But didn't you have a question, Isha?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard that the tiger shark is
Hmm.
called the trash can of the sea.
Yeah.
Um, how come they can like eat everything and but other sharks they don't.
So I think lots of other sharks are just a bit more selective. Like they know these are the sort of types of fish that I'll eat. Especially if you're a reef shark,
Mhm.
you will eat fish that are on the reef, right? tiger sharks, because they're so big, firstly, they can eat a lot of stuff just because they can fit a lot of stuff in their mouth. So I
Oh,
think there's a rule of thumb in the ocean is stuff tends to try and eat stuff that is as big as 2/3 of its body length. I think.
oh wow.
Yeah, I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's 1/3, but I'd have to look it up again. But it was. I remember when I read it, I was like, "Geez, that's big." They will try and stuff huge things in their mouth because then they can just let it sit there and digest for days and days and days, and it gives them energy for ages. And eventually, it breaks down, and they don't need to eat anything for ages. Like humans need to eat a lot of food regularly because we've got big energy hungry brains. We burn off a lot of heat walking around or whatever. Whereas
Yeah.
lots of other animals are much more conservative. Like think about crocodiles, they'll have a big meal, they might not eat for weeks. And
Yeah.
sharks can be the same way. Um, so it's sort of the same thing as I was saying about oceanic whitetips, where because they don't see anything for a while, they'll try and see anything they find, they'll see if it's worth eating. Tiger sharks are kind of the same way. Once they get really big, they will be the biggest thing that they've ever seen. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like a big tiger shark might never see almost anything else in the ocean bigger than it. It might see a whale, but by and large, everything it sees, it could potentially eat. So a huge turtle, massive, great big shell, will try and eat it. Um, and then anything that looks like it might be food that's
yeah.
just floating around. So folks have found like a human leg in a tiger shark that, as far as I remember, the tiger shark didn't kill. It just found the leg. Just like, all right, I'm eating this.
Found a leg?
Yeah, a human leg.
Oh wow, okay.
Boots, car tires, car license plates, just random stuff that it finds in the ocean. They'll be like, yeah, that looks worth trying. I'll give it a go.
So what does this mean for tiger sharks for the future since they're so easy to like adapt, especially with dietary stuff? So,
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that we're putting so much trash in the ocean. I mean, we're putting a lot of trash in the ocean, so maybe I'm wrong. I was going to say I don't think that we're putting so much trash in the ocean
uh-huh.
that it is a risk to tiger shark diets, but I could be wrong. But I don't think it should be a problem. I would
No,
get.
but as in like if they're if they're able to adapt like dietary so they can eat like almost anything, they're not that selective. Will they be, does that mean they'll have like a successful future ahead of them or
Oh, I
something?
see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, I presume that it's related to their success in general already, right? Because they move across different ecosystems. They spend a lot of time in warm reefs, but then they'll go offshore. They'll go on big migrations, so they have to be prepared to eat things that they find in all ecosystems. So I guess this is all. I guess the success has already happened in a way, right? Because they're already a top predator. They're found across loads of the world.
Yeah.
um, so they're doing pretty well, right? So
Mm.
Do you think humans should be afraid of sharks?
I mean, I think it's natural to be afraid of them because they do kill people. Although, like I say, 5 a year, hardly any. But also because they just look scary. I think that's fair enough. But we kill 100 million of them. Like, I mean, I think it's okay to be scared of something as long as your fear doesn't lead you to overreact, right? If you've got a healthy fear that means that you take precautions, I think that's kind of a good thing for anything. If you're, I don't know, scared about your car crashing, and that means you make sure you take it to go and get serviced regularly and blah, 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 then that's a good thing, right? As long as you're not so scared that you'll never drive and you never leave your house. There's a good amount of fear, or there's a right amount of fear for things, I guess, right? Proportional to risk. Um, I think it's unfortunate, like we were saying about the Jaws movie. I think it's unfortunate that because sharks seem so scary, that people have overreacted to the fear, and it's led people to kill them so much. And it'd be lovely if folks, even if they're a bit scared of them, use that fear to find out more about them, because I mean, this is just me talking. I think they're super cool and really interesting. And like you said about the fluoride facts and stuff, there's so much cool stuff about them that like you keep learning interesting stuff. And they're beautiful, fascinating creatures. If the fear drives people to learn more about them and care about them and want to conserve them, because even if they're scared about them, they recognize that sharks are vital to ecosystems. They're vital to the ocean. Without them, the ocean would just grind to a halt. Um, so if fear helps people to be interested and be enthusiastic about them, then maybe it's a good thing.
So, what would you think is people overreacting too much out of fear when it comes to sharks?
Well, certainly the fishing thing, right? So, or the just killing them for the sake of it. So, when Jaws after Jaws came out, the phrase was any dead shark is a good shark, or any
Mm,
good shark is a dead shark. Essentially, kill all the sharks you can, right? They're just vermin. Get rid of them, and then we'll all be safe. And that was just terrible.
yeah.
Now, like I say, that 100 million sharks a year thing, that is mostly not people just killing them for the sake of it. There are still like shark fishing competitions in Florida where folks go out and compete to see how many sharks they can catch and basically compete to see how many things they can kill, which sucks, super sucks, because like these are, like I say, beautiful creatures. They're vital for ecosystems, and going out and murdering them for no reason is just terrible. But most sharks that get killed are just through fishing, right?
Yeah.
So there's the whole thing about sharks fin soup.
Yeah.
That was a big factor. It's gone down a lot, but just they get caught a lot in fisheries in the world in general. So hopefully this is something that we, in terms of fisheries management, can do a better job of protecting sharks from being indiscriminately killed by accident or for fun, things like that.
How can we learn to coexist with sharks?
I think that's kind of it, right? Is we're going to keep fishing because people need protein to live. Um, and so if we can keep fishing and not keep accidentally catching loads and loads and loads of sharks and killing them, that'll be a real benefit. Coexisting, I mean, I think for all the scaremongering, I think we do a pretty good job of coexisting already, right? Like I say, sharks kill 5 people a year. So in terms of the risk to us for sharks, there isn't really hardly any risk. I mean, they're scary, but they don't hardly ever kill anyone. They bite a few people, but only like a few, 20, 40 a year, something like that. Not very much, right? And they hardly ever kill anyone. So in terms of us existing with sharks, I think we're fine. I think sharks existing with us is the problem, right? And that's what I'm sort of talking about with fishing. Like as we get, hopefully we can get better and better at reducing the amount of sharks that we kill so that their populations stay healthy and start to recover and don't go extinct. That's the hope.
So, and then for kids like us and maybe kids who are listening, what do you think we can do to help the sharks?
What can you do to help the sharks? I mean, certainly just if you're interested in it, stay interested, right? Keep reading. One thing you can definitely do, and you spoke to Monterey Bay, right? So Monterey Bay have a super cool little fold-out book. I think
Yeah,
it's called the. Have you got this thing, the Seafood Guide? I think it's
yeah,
called
the seafood watch.
Seafood Watch. Thank you. Yes. So Monterey Bay Seafood Watch is fabulous. If you're not aware of this, it's a little fold-out card thing, and it tells you which fish are okay to eat and which fish aren't okay to eat based on how well the fishery itself is managed and regulated. And a lot of that stuff is with long lining or fish aggregating devices, which are different ways of catching fish. And if they do that, like I say, indiscriminately and catch, let's say you're trying to catch tuna, and then they also catch hundreds and hundreds of sharks and kill them, and turtles and seabirds, that's terrible for the ocean.
Yeah.
But if you instead choose to eat a fish that you know has been caught sustainably using good practices, then that's going to be a lot better for the ocean and a lot better for things like sharks and turtles and other fish that no one wanted to catch in the first place.
Thank you for having this interview with us. We were so happy
Thank you
to get it.
guys.
It's been such a great interview with you.
Aw.
We were really
Good.
excited. So
Oh, good. Oh, thanks, guys. Well, this has been great. I've been really looking forward to this. So thanks so much for having me.
bye.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
See you. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you tell us what was your favorite shark we mentioned in this episode.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Dedman, who is currently working for Florida International University, for helping us out with this interview.
See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.